Hunter Biden is headed to Washington today as he is supposed to sit for a closed-door deposition in front of the House Oversight Committee. His recent indictment in California, however, may complicate things and might give him an excuse to not show up. If he doesn't show up, he will be held in contempt of Congress, according to House Oversight Chairman James Comer. He explained to me what that means earlier in the program last week.
He should be afraid of that.
Why?
He should be more afraid of that than anyone in America, because he's in more trouble than anyone in America, probably who's ever been subpoenaed in front of a congressional investigation. I mean, this guy is under investigation for crimes ranging from money laundering to securities fraud and everything in between. If he gets voted in contempt of Congress, that's more penalties that he's going to have to pay a price for when his judgment day finally happens.
And joining me right now on that judgment day is Harvard Law Professor Emeritus and the author of both Get Trump and the Threat to Civil Liberties, Due Process, and Our Constitutional Rule of Law, and War Against the Jews, How to End Hamas Barbarism. Alan Dershowitz is here once again. Welcome back, Alan. Good to see you. I want to talk to you about this moment in time, just an incredible situation. We've got the deposition of Hunter Biden that we're expecting to take place later today. We've got the impeachment inquiry that we're expecting the vote to formalize it to happen today. What do you expect out of this deposition of Hunter Biden? You think he'll just plead the fifth all day?
Well, he has the right to plead the fifth. He had the right to plead the fifth even before he got indicted. As Comer told you, quote, he's in more trouble. When you're in trouble, criminal trouble, you have a right to plead the fifth. But if you plead the fifth in front of Congress, obviously, you can draw inferences from that in the court of public opinion and in civil trials as well, though probably not in criminal trials. So I suspect that he will plead the fifth because I don't think he wants to be subject to vigorous cross-examination by Comer and others like him.
Yeah, and that's why he wanted the open forum, because he knew that it would be each lawmaker has 5 minutes and then you just move on. You really don't have an opportunity to dig deep. But I want to get your take on this compared to what's going on with Trump. Jack Smith has his new ideas to bring the Supreme Court in. New court filings reveal that the special counsel, Jack Smith, plans to use data from former President Trump's cell phone in his final weeks in office, including data revealing when Trump's phone was, quote, unlocked, and the Twitter, now X, application was opened on January 6, 2021. As Trump's legal team has filed a motion urging to pause proceedings against the former president while his appeal is pending. So on the one hand, you've got Jack Smith saying, OK, Supreme Court, we want you to decide on whether or not the claim that Donald Trump says he is immune from prosecution. What does the Supreme Court have to say about that? Jumping ahead of the D.C. appeals court. And then this idea that he's going to use Trump's phone and get the data from it. Your thoughts on all of this?
It's remarkable that somebody like Smith would appeal a win. He won the issue about immunity, and then he appealed his win. In 60 years of doing more appeals than probably any private lawyer in America, I've never seen a prosecutor win in the trial court and then appeal. Obviously, the goal of the prosecutor is to get a conviction, which he will get in the District of Columbia. The betting odds are probably 100 to 1 in favor of him getting a conviction in a jurisdiction where 90-some-odd% of the people hate Donald Trump. He wants to get a conviction down and dirty before the election, knowing it very well may be reversed after the election, but it will be too late. This really does constitute a form of election interference, denying us, the public, the right to vote against him or for him without interference by a criminal trial. Look, what's happened is the weaponization of the criminal justice system by both sides. I believe that if Donald Trump didn't have a last name Trump and if Hunter Biden didn't have a last name Biden, it is far less likely that either of them would be criminally prosecuted. But we're seeing tit for tat. We're seeing that in the impeachment trial. As soon as Donald Trump was impeached, I predicted that there would be an impeachment inquiry and maybe an investigation and maybe an impeachment against the next Democratic president. And that's where we're going, and the American public is the loser.
Well, that's very discouraging. But, you know, you could say it's easy to say it's tit for tat. But the truth is, Alan, there's a lot of evidence here against Hunter Biden and the role that Joe Biden played in all this money that he accepted. You don't think so?
Boy, there should be a special counsel, a very distinguished, dignified special counsel appointed to investigate Joe Biden's role in all this, because that's what the public wants to know about.
That's right.
Was Joe involved? Says no, they say yes. Let's get to the bottom of it.
Oh, and what about Trump at this point? In terms of the Supreme Court weighing in on whether or not he's immune from prosecution because he was the president, where do you stand on that?
The president has some immunity, but he doesn't have total immunity, and it's a very interesting and difficult question. The issue is when the Supreme Court will decide that question, not whether it decides it. It will decide that issue. It has to. But will it decide it before the trial or after the trial? The hints are that probably it will decide it before trial because it set out a schedule, which it doesn't usually do unless it has an inclination, at least, to take the case.
But anytime they do it, isn't now this entire year election interference? I mean, you're what? How many days away from Iowa, New Hampshire? You've got 320 days or something like that before the election. Anything that happens at this point.
And we've seen polls that say that independents might very well be influenced by whether there's a conviction. The problem is a conviction would not really carry any weight with reasonable people if the conviction occurs in New York City or if the conviction occurs in Washington, D.C. or Fulton County. Those are not venues that can give Donald Trump a fair trial.
So do you believe we will see a trial before the election, or do you believe the Trump folks will be able to push it off until after the election? How does this play out?
They're going to try their best. It's going to be up to the discretion of judges. I suspect there will be at least one trial and probably one conviction before the election. And I think there's a substantial chance that any convictions will be very, very carefully scrutinized by the appellate courts and ultimately by the Supreme Court.
And you think it'll be appealed and perhaps reversed after the election?
That's right. I think definitely will be appealed after the election, and I think there's a substantial chance it could be reversed based on venue, based on immunity, based on lack of reasonable basis for a search of a phone. There are many, many grounds on appeal, but it will have no effect on the election if it occurs after the election rather than before the election.
Right. Alan, you, of course, are the professor emeritus at Harvard. I want to get your take on the outcome of this debacle. Harvard President Claudine Gay will remain in office after receiving unanimous support from the university board following that congressional testimony on growing anti-Semitism on college campuses. New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik reacted to the news. She highlighted the university's lack of leadership. Watch this.
This is a moral failure of Harvard's leadership and higher education leadership at the highest levels. And the only change they have made to their code of conduct, where they failed to condemn calls for genocide of the Jewish people, the only update to the code of conduct is to allow a plagiarist as the president of Harvard.
Your thoughts, Alan, on all of this?
Well, first of all, it is a terrible moral failure, not only on behalf of the corporation, which originally appointed Gay, she never should have been appointed, and then just doubled down and refused to remove her, but also on behalf of the 700 or 800 faculty members who demanded that she be kept on without in any way responding to the great points made by people like Bill Ackman and others. Yeah, you don't want to see pressure from donors, but you want to see people answer questions. She has done terrible things. She was not a supporter of free speech. She discovered free speech on October 7th. For her, it's free speech to call for genocide for Jews, but it's not free speech to say anything critical of protected minorities such as blacks, gays, transgender people. And so she's applied a terrible, terrible double standard. And she didn't testify truthfully when she said Harvard has a deep commitment to free speech. Under her leadership, Harvard has had no commitment to free speech. They rank last among every university on free speech. Suddenly, there's free speech, but for who? Only for people who want to commit genocide against Jews.
Unbelievable.
That double standard. She is responsible for that double standard.
That is just disgusting. So why are they keeping her then?
Well, because they don't want to be pushed around, they don't want to be bullied, and because she is a product of DEI, product of the diversity, inclusion, equity program, which is trying universities, and they don't want to dismantle that. And unless they dismantle DEI and get rid of people like like President Gay as president. She should stay on as a professor and continue to write and continue to be criticized for her writing on the merits without any prejudice. But she does no longer satisfy the standards by her own standards of being president. She fired him because he had created an atmosphere, she said, in which students were afraid. By that standard, she should be fired as well. Her own standard. Students are terrified today to go on campus, and they point to President Gay as the reason for that fear.
Incredible, incredible moment when Jewish students are actually fearing for their lives. Alan, good to see you. Thanks very much.